Listen. Practice. Speak. Practice makes you perfect.
All right, so are you ready to dive into some real-world business English with us today?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So we've got a whole stack of conversations here covering everything from those, typical project updates all the way to some pretty out there metaverse strategies.
Yeah.
So think of this as your cheat sheet for navigating all those high stakes meetings. But instead of it giving you dry theory, the kind of stuff you might find in a textbook, we're really going to be extracting, the juiciest, the most practical insights from all of this.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, to kind of decode all of that corporate jargon for everyone.
Exactly. So, expert speaker, are you ready to decode some corporate jargon?
I am so ready. What I find fascinating is how these conversations, even though they're in English, they actually reveal the universal struggles that people in business are facing everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about supply chain problems, talent wars, it's all there.
Totally. It's like, if you could eavesdrop on a global water cooler chat, but with way higher stakes because, people's jobs and livelihoods are on the line.
Right, exactly.
So let's jump right in. Let's start with this conversation labeled the Wilson Project.
Okay.
It's that classic tale of project management woes. We've got vendor delays, the clock's ticking, and you hear that dreaded phrase that nobody wants to hear, behind schedule.
Yep, sounds familiar. But what I think is really interesting here is how the project lead is handling this whole situation. They're not, freaking out.
Yeah.
Instead, they're proactively thinking ahead, coming up with solutions. They've already got some backup vendors all lined up, which, in my book, that's smart risk management right there.
Yeah.
And they're also keeping the client informed every step of the way, so that helps to build trust, even when things go wrong.
I love that. Transparency is key, right? Nobody likes surprises, especially when we're talking about deadlines and budgets. And speaking of budgets, this project is down to a 5% buffer. Yeah, that's thinner than a startup CEO's patience during a pitch meeting.
Right. That's not a lot of wiggle room. It's definitely a big red flag.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a signal that there are going to be some tough choices ahead. Do they use that little tiny reserve, knowing that there's a risk that a bigger problem could come up later if costs keep rising? Or, maybe they should try to renegotiate with the client, but that could potentially strain the relationship. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, so what would you recommend in this kind of situation? Because it seems like almost a lose-lose.
Well, I think the key here is to try to quantify, as much as possible, the potential consequences of each option.
Okay.
So, think about what's the absolute worst-case scenario if they do decide to use up that remaining buffer. And then on the other hand, what are the chances that the client's actually going to agree to renegotiate the terms? So once you've kind of laid out all the different options and you thought through all the potential risks, then, you're in a much better position to make an informed decision.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, speaking of tricky situations, let's shift gears and move on to this contract negotiation.
Ooh, yeah.
And in this one, you're actually going to be put in the hot seat a little bit. You're going to be playing the client who is pushing for some better payment terms.
Okay, I can handle that.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, so this conversation is like a masterclass in subtle negotiation tactics.
Yeah.
We see that the client, they're trying to aim for net 60 payment terms, which means that they would essentially have more time to pay their invoices.
Right.
Classic cash flow strategy.
Smart move.
But, the vendor on the other side of the table, they're not just giving in that easily. They counteroffer with net 45 terms, which is a little bit shorter. But here's the interesting part. They offer a 2% discount if the client pays early.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a little bit of a financial chess match, going back and forth.
I love it.
And I think it's brilliant because it's a win-win for both sides, right?
Yeah.
It incentivizes the client to pay a little bit faster, which obviously helps the vendor's cash flow.
Yeah.
But it still gives the client a little bit of breathing room.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
And then the client, like a true negotiator, they spot an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
They realize that maintenance support isn't included in the original pricing. So they manage to bundle that in as well at a discount. Talk about maximizing value. What I find really interesting about this whole conversation is how it highlights that negotiation doesn't have to be this, adversarial thing where one side wins and the other side loses.
It doesn't. You're absolutely right. It's really about finding a solution that actually benefits both parties. So think of it like a Venn diagram, the area where the two circles overlap. That's where the best deals are made.
I love that analogy. Okay, so now let's switch gears a little bit and jump into the world of remote work, which I'm sure many of you listening out there can relate to.
I know I can.
So we've got this video call conversation that it really captures the unique challenges of collaborating when everyone's, scattered all over the place. One detail that really jumped out at me was this whole struggle with document version control.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, just imagine like multiple people all working on the same file at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for confusion,
Yeah.
People's edits get lost, everybody's frustrated. It's a mess.
I've been there, and it is not fun. It's like, I don't know, trying to herd cats, but like digital cats that have editing privileges.
Yeah.
So how do you tame this chaos? What are some solutions?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to invest in the right tools, right?
Okay.
So look for file sharing solutions that have features like real-time collaboration. That way everybody can see what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And version history tracking, that's a lifesaver because if something does go wrong, you can always go back and see who made what changes.
I love that. Yeah.
And then just as important as the tools themselves, I think you've got to set some very clear communication protocols.
Okay.
So like who owns which sections of the document, what's the process for getting things approved. These things sound really basic, but having them clearly laid out can prevent so many headaches down the road.
It's like having like a digital traffic cop to kind of direct the flow of information.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so now let's switch gears to a topic that's always interesting, performance reviews.
The dreaded performance review.
Right. In this scenario, you are the employee and you're getting some amazing feedback. Your customer satisfaction scores are through the roof, and you even automated a system that saved everyone a ton of time.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
That's what I call working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. But what's really insightful here is how, you as the employee kind of subtly hint at your ambition for, potentially moving up in the company.
It's all about being strategic.
Exactly. So you express this desire to improve your project management skills, specifically in, resource allocation, that kind of thing. You're not just accepting the praise, you're planting the seeds for future growth.
You got to think ahead, right?
Right. It's like playing career chess, thinking a few moves ahead. So for our listener, what's the takeaway here when it comes to navigating these performance conversations? Because they can be so tricky.
Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
Okay.
Highlight all your amazing achievements, but also be clear about what your goals are for your career. It's your chance to shape your future within the company.
Awesome advice. Okay, so now let's put on our market analyst hats for a minute.
I love those hats.
Q3 numbers are in, and the pressure is on to craft a winning strategy for Q4. One thing that really stood out in this conversation was the rising demand for sustainable products. It's like businesses and consumers alike are finally waking up to the fact that, hey, we need to take care of this planet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this isn't just some feel-good trend. This is really impacting companies' bottom lines.
Right.
I think companies that ignore this shift in what consumers want, they're doing it at their own peril.
Totally. And they also talk about how their targeted LinkedIn campaigns have generated a 200% increase in ROI.
Wow.
So to anyone out there who still thinks that social media is just for cat videos and political rants,
Or arguing with your relatives.
this proves that it's actually a really powerful tool when it's used strategically for business.
Right. It all comes down to understanding your audience and creating content that resonates with them.
Yeah.
This company clearly figured out how to do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so now brace yourselves because we're about to walk into a budget showdown. Operational costs are up 15%, but there's this ambitious plan on the table for a 20% expansion.
Oh boy. That sounds like a tricky situation.
It's like trying to, juggle chainsaws while balancing on a tightrope. Yeah.
I would not want to be in that meeting. But I think this conversation is a great example of how to really dissect a budget and understand the reasoning behind all those numbers. We see this detailed breakdown of why costs are rising. Everything from raw material prices going up to new compliance requirements that they have to meet.
Right. But it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, they've actually factored in some growth projections, and they seem pretty confident about maintaining healthy margins.
It's like they have a financial crystal ball, but instead of giving vague predictions, it's spitting out cold, hard data.
Exactly.
And what I found really insightful was their emphasis on having a plan B, like a contingency plan.
Oh, yeah.
They've built in a 10% buffer to the budget to account for any unexpected things that might happen in the market. That's proactive risk management.
I love that. Okay, but here's where things take a surprising turn. The board actually approves a separate budget for a green initiative.
Wow, that's a big win.
Right. It's like, doing good for the planet and potentially good for the business.
Exactly. And it shows that companies are starting to understand that sustainability isn't just some nice to have, it's actually good for business in the long run.
Totally. And they've got the numbers to back it up. Solar panels are projected to slash energy costs by 40%, and they're aiming for carbon neutrality by 2026. That's not just a feel-good story, that's a smart business strategy.
It really is. It's about taking a long-term perspective.
Mm.
These initiatives might require some upfront investment, but the payback can be huge.
Totally. And I'm talking cost savings, brand reputation, even employee morale. Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. It's a ripple effect.
Okay, so now hold on tight because we're about to experience a little bit of a digital earthquake.
Uh-oh.
System outage.
Every company's worst nightmare.
This conversation throws us right into the heart of crisis management.
Yep. And what I find really impressive here is how quickly and clearly they respond. I mean, they immediately activate their emergency protocol, they figure out what's going on, and they prioritize communication above everything else.
Yeah, that's key.
They start sending out hourly updates to all their customers, keeping them informed, trying to minimize the panic. It's a textbook example of how to handle a crisis.
It is, and it's high pressure, too. I mean, we're talking 2,000 customers impacted across multiple platforms. You've got the IT team scrambling to find a fix, the PR team's trying to figure out what to tell the media. Everyone's just like laser focused on getting things back online.
And this really underscores how important it is to have a crisis management plan in place before disaster strikes.
Yeah.
You don't want to be trying to figure out who's in charge and what to do when the servers are literally melting down around you.
No, definitely not. It's like having an escape route planned, before the fire even starts. Okay, so now let's shift our focus to the global stage.
Okay, I'm ready.
Market research is pointing to some massive potential in Asia.
Hmm.
And it looks like Singapore is the prime target for expansion.
That's a hot market right now.
It is, but this conversation really highlights the complexities of going global. It's not as simple as, translating your website and just hoping for the best.
No, it's not. There's so many things to consider.
We're talking about regulatory hurdles, cultural nuances, and the need to make sure that your product or service is actually appealing to local tastes.
It's a whole new level of business strategy.
It is. They're even talking about things like, navigating all these complex licensing requirements, finding local partners, even the need for potentially bilingual staff or translation services.
A lot to juggle.
It is. And they're not shying away from the risks either, right?
Right. They specifically mention concerns about currency fluctuations and protecting their intellectual property.
It's a big undertaking. I mean, going global takes guts, but the potential rewards are enormous.
Absolutely. And sometimes those risks pay off in a big way.
Okay, so get ready for a little bit of a product launch whirlwind.
I love a good product launch.
Oh, they're exceeding all their performance targets, which is fantastic news. But, of course, there's a catch, right?
There's always a catch. What is it?
So in this case, it's cost overruns.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. They had to use some premium materials to hit those really tough durability targets, and, well, that pushed them over budget.
I see.
But they're not giving up. They're exploring design tweaks and cost optimization strategies, trying to find ways to trim expenses without sacrificing quality.
Okay.
And they've also got some overwhelmingly positive feedback from their focus groups, so it sounds like they're on the right track.
That's a good sign.
Plus, their market analysis is predicting first-year sales of, wait for it, 50,000 units.
Wow.
That's a number that turns heads, Rick.
Definitely. This new product has the potential to be a real game changer.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we are stepping into the world of tech transformation, and there's this conversation about implementing a new CRM system.
CRM, the lifeblood of any business.
Right. And this isn't just about shiny new software. This is about actually streamlining processes, improving customer relationships, really upping their game.
It's a big undertaking, though, right?
Mm.
I mean, anytime you implement a new system, there are always some growing pains.
There are, and they talk about the nightmare of data migration.
Ugh, yes. Data migration is never fun. And then there's the need to train all the employees on the new system and, They even anticipate a little dip in productivity while everybody's getting up to speed.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
trying to swap out the engine of a car while it's still running.
It is. It is. But they're focusing on the long-term gains here.
Right.
Improved efficiency, better customer satisfaction, and some really robust security measures to protect all that sensitive data. It's really about laying the foundation for, a more agile, customer-centric business.
And in today's fast-paced world, companies that resist change are going to get left behind.
They are. They are. Okay, so now hold on tight because things are about to get a little bit dark.
Ooh, I love a good plot twist.
So this risk analysis conversation is a bit of a sobering reminder that even when things are going well, even when you're innovating, you know, there are still threats out there.
Threats around every corner.
Right. And what's really striking is how they actually put a dollar figure on the potential damage of a cybersecurity breach.
Yeah.
We're talking up to $5 million in direct and reputational costs.
Oh, wow. That's a number that makes even the most seasoned CEO sweat. But they're not just panicking, they're actually taking action. They're talking about upgrading their security infrastructure, implementing regular penetration testing, basically hiring ethical hackers to try to break into their system to see where the vulnerabilities are.
Smart.
And they're even beefing up their insurance coverage just in case.
That's smart. It's like that old saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly.
Okay, so remember that green initiative budget we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of how they're going to make it happen.
All right, let's get down to the details.
And this conversation is packed with practical examples of how companies can actually reduce their environmental footprint. They're starting with solar panels, which they project are going to cut energy costs by 40%. That's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's not just about the cost savings either.
Right.
It's about reducing their reliance on fossil fuels and contributing to a cleaner energy future.
Absolutely. And they're not stopping there.
What else are they doing?
They're implementing carbon footprint tracking software. They're launching this really cool sustainability ambassador program to get all the employees involved. And they're even partnering with suppliers who meet their new, stricter environmental standards.
It's a holistic approach.
It is. It's not just about, making a symbolic gesture. They're really integrating sustainability into every aspect of their operations.
And what's really impressive is that they're tying all these initiatives to measurable outcomes. So they're aiming for carbon neutrality by 2026, and they actually project a 15% cost savings within 3 years.
It's like they're proving that sustainability isn't just some ethical thing to do. It can actually be a really smart business decision as well.
Right. And more companies are realizing that.
They are. They are. Okay, so now we all know the frustration of delayed deliveries, logistical headaches.
Ugh, don't remind me. I'm still waiting on a package that was supposed to arrive last week.
Oh, no. Well, this conversation takes it to a whole new level. They're facing these skyrocketing logistics costs, and they're really looking for ways to just streamline their entire distribution network.
So it's not just about finding cheaper shipping rates.
No.
They're really talking about rethinking the entire system. They're proposing some major changes, like consolidating their warehouses, to reduce overhead, and implementing some AI-powered inventory management so they can really optimize their stock levels. It's like a giant logistical Tetris game trying to fit all the pieces together in the most efficient way possible.
I love that analogy. And they're even considering, spending big money, like $2 million, to upgrade their entire warehouse management system and all their tracking software.
That's a big investment.
It is, but here's the key. They've also projected an 18-month payback period.
Okay, so they expect to recoup their investment pretty quickly.
Relatively quickly, yeah. Which is a good reminder that, sometimes you have to spend money to make money, especially when it comes to investing in technology and efficiency improvements that are going to have a long-term impact on your business.
Absolutely. It's all about calculating that return on investment and making sure that the benefits outweigh the costs.
Okay, so it's time for a conversation about something I think we can all appreciate. Employee benefits.
The best part of any job.
Right. It's the annual benefits package review, and they're essentially benchmarking their offerings against, what everyone else in the industry is doing.
It's like a corporate benefits bake-off. But instead of delicious treats, we're talking healthcare coverage and parental leave.
Exactly. And it turns out that they're actually falling behind in a couple of key areas, particularly parental leave and mental health support, which are both, becoming increasingly important for employees, especially in today's, competitive job market.
Right. People are really looking for employers that prioritize their well-being.
Absolutely. And they've got the data to back it up, too.
Okay.
They've actually surveyed their employees and found that, the things people really care about are things like flexible working hours and, really good healthcare coverage.
It's like they're listening to their employees' wish lists and trying to deliver.
They are. They're proposing a 12% increase to the benefits budget.
Wow, that's significant.
It is, which would actually put them above the industry average. They're also talking about increasing their 401k match to attract and retain top talent.
It's a smart move because when you invest in your employees, they're more likely to be loyal and productive.
And they're actually projecting that these enhanced benefits are going to help them reduce their time to hire by 20%. That's a big improvement.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So it's not just about doing the right thing for employees, it's also good for the business.
All right, so now let's talk about how to stay ahead of the curve. This conversation about accelerating the innovation pipeline, it's crucial for any business that wants to, not just survive, but really thrive in today's world.
Absolutely. If you're not innovating, you're stagnating.
Exactly. And they're specifically looking at emerging technologies like AI integration, blockchain solutions, the things that have the potential to transform entire industries.
Right. The game changers.
Exactly. And they're not just, talking the talk, they're also walking the walk. They're considering setting up a dedicated innovation lab with a full R&D team, which is a pretty serious commitment to innovation. They're also looking at ways to encourage internal innovation.
Oh, interesting. How are they doing that?
So things like launching an employee innovation challenge to tap into the creativity of, all the people they already have working for them. It's about creating a culture where people are encouraged to experiment and, try new things and be rewarded for coming up with new ideas.
It's about creating a culture of innovation. I love that.
And they're not limiting themselves to internal resources either.
Yeah.
They're also looking at external partnerships with like tech startups to get access to, really cutting edge expertise and technologies.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel when you can partner with someone who's already doing it well?
Exactly. This conversation really showcases a proactive approach to innovation. It's about understanding that staying ahead of the curve requires constant exploration, experimentation, and collaboration.
It's about embracing change and being willing to take risks.
All right, time for a little reality check. Customer satisfaction scores. It seems like there's always room for improvement, right?
Always. What have they found?
So this conversation really highlights how important it is to constantly analyze that customer feedback and, always be looking for ways to improve. They've pinpointed a couple of key areas that are impacting their scores, like slow response times and a low first call resolution rate.
Those are frustrating for customers.
They are. But they're not just, sitting around complaining about it. They're brainstorming solutions. So things like implementing AI-powered chatbots so customers can get instant support.
It's a great use of AI.
And they're also talking about, expanding their customer support team so that they can handle a higher volume of inquiries.
Okay.
But what I really like is that they're also thinking about the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
So, imagine you're a customer and you have to explain your problem over and over again to different people in different departments. It's frustrating. So they're trying to address that by creating this unified platform where, you basically tell your story once and then it gets shared across all the relevant departments.
I love that. It's about making the customer experience as seamless as possible.
Exactly. And they've set a really specific target, a 30% improvement in customer satisfaction within 6 months.
It's ambitious, but I think it's achievable if they're committed to making real progress.
It shows that they're serious about it. This conversation really emphasizes that customer satisfaction isn't just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process that requires constant attention, adaptation, and a willingness to invest in the tools and resources that are needed to deliver exceptional service.
It's about going above and beyond to meet customer expectations.
All right, so back to the serious stuff. The board wants a comprehensive risk analysis.
Okay, let's see what they come up with.
And it sounds like they are not messing around.
No, risk management is serious business.
This conversation is a good reminder that even when things are going great, businesses still need to be super vigilant about identifying and mitigating those potential risks. And they're not shying away from asking those really tough questions. They're talking about their most significant vulnerabilities, like cybersecurity threats, and even putting a dollar figure on the potential damage that a major breach could cause.
Right. Quantifying the risk is essential for prioritizing mitigation efforts.
Absolutely. And they're not just focusing on those external threats either. They're talking about operational risks,
Yeah.
things like supply chain disruptions, key personnel dependency, really taking a holistic approach to risk management.
If it's smart, you need to consider all the angles.
But here's the key. They're not just identifying these risks, they're actually developing contingency plans, response protocols for different scenarios. They're even thinking about expanding their insurance coverage to provide that extra layer of protection.
This conversation really underscores the importance of proactive risk management. By identifying those potential risks early on, businesses can develop strategies to mitigate them and minimize the potential damage.
All right, so let's get back to basics for a minute. Quality control. It seems like they've uncovered some issues with their current processes and are looking to really step up their game.
Quality is king, right? So what are they doing to improve?
So what I find interesting is how they're actually using external benchmarks to kind of assess their own performance. So they've compared their quality management system to those ISO standards,
Okay.
and they found that they're actually falling short in a few key areas, particularly in documentation consistency and their testing protocols.
I see. So they have some work to do.
They do, but they're not just accepting it. They're proposing some pretty significant changes, like implementing automated testing systems to improve accuracy and efficiency.
Makes sense.
And they want to standardize their documentation procedures to get rid of all those inconsistencies. It's like they're giving their quality control system a much-needed upgrade.
That sounds like it.
But they're also acknowledging that these changes are going to come with some initial challenges.
Right. Change is never easy. What are they expecting?
They're anticipating about a 10% slowdown in production as everybody, gets trained on the new procedures and adapts to the new way of doing things.
Okay, so little bit of short-term pain.
A little bit, but they're confident that it'll lead to long-term gains in efficiency and quality.
Right.
It's a good example of how sometimes businesses need to, embrace a little bit of short-term discomfort to reap those long-term benefits.
Absolutely. Sometimes you have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Exactly. All right, so jingle bells, jingle all the way. It's holiday season, and that means it's marketing blitz time.
It's the most wonderful time of the year for marketers.
And this conversation gives us a glimpse into, all the strategic thinking that goes into a successful holiday campaign. They're really laser focused on their target demographic.
Who are they going after?
Millennials and Gen Z, the folks who are, super digitally savvy, they live on social media.
Right, the generation that practically invented social media.
Exactly. And so they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Okay.
60% of their budget is going to digital marketing.
Wow.
They're even increasing their video content by 200% and leveraging influencer partnerships to really maximize their reach.
It's like they're creating a digital holiday spectacle that's impossible to ignore.
Exactly. But they're not totally neglecting those traditional media channels either. They're still allocating 25% of their budget to things like, print and TV ads.
Okay, so a good mix of traditional and digital.
Exactly. And then they're not forgetting about experiential marketing either, because they know that creating those memorable in-person experiences is really important.
It's all about reaching the customer on multiple levels.
It is. So it's a really well-rounded strategy, combining the best of both worlds.
I like it.
But they're not just, throwing money around. They're being really strategic about measuring that return on investment. So they're going to track conversion rates, engagement metrics, all the data that tells them whether their campaign is actually working.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about something I think we all deal with every day. Payments.
Yeah, gotta love payments.
It seems like in this conversation, they're really looking to expand their payment options to kind of meet the, ever-changing needs of their customers, especially those who are really into that whole digital life.
It's all about convenience these days.
Right.
And this conversation really highlights how fast the payment landscape is changing. They're seeing a growing demand for things like cryptocurrency,
Yeah.
mobile wallet options, especially among younger generations, the ones who are practically glued to their smartphones.
Yeah, it's like cash is going the way of the dinosaurs, right?
It's definitely becoming less common, especially for online transactions and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. This company, they're not just blindly chasing after every new trend that comes along.
Right.
They're carefully considering all the technical challenges that come with integrating these new payment systems.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about things like, how do we upgrade our security protocols? How do we minimize the risk of fraud? It's a lot to juggle.
Oh, it is. It is.
And they've also done their homework on like all the different payment providers out there, comparing things like their security, their reliability, and of course, those pesky transaction fees that can eat into your profits.
Always got to watch out for those fees.
You do. But here's something I think is really important. They're not forgetting about the human element in all of this.
Okay.
They're planning to train their customer support team on all these new payment systems.
Mm-hmm.
So, they can provide really seamless assistance to customers who might have questions or run into problems.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of having all these fancy new payment options if your customers can't figure out how to use them?
Exactly. You've got to make it easy for them.
Okay, so speaking of taking care of people, let's switch gears and talk about the conversation on employee well-being.
Okay, I love this topic.
It seems like they're going above and beyond, just basic benefits. They're trying to create a really comprehensive wellness program.
That's fantastic. And I think this reflects a growing understanding that employee well-being isn't just some nice perk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually a strategic advantage. Because, when your employees are healthy and happy, they're more productive.
Totally.
And they're less likely to leave the company.
Makes sense. So what kind of things are they talking about?
Well, they're talking about a program that addresses both physical and mental health, which I think is so important.
Yeah, especially in today's kind of high-pressure work environment.
It's essential.
Yeah.
So they're looking at things like, offering virtual fitness classes, providing mental health resources, maybe like an employee assistance program, even things like wellness challenges, just to kind of encourage some friendly competition and boost morale.
I love that.
And they're not just pulling these ideas out of thin air. They're actually citing studies that have shown that similar programs have led to like a 20% reduction in absenteeism,
Wow.
which obviously translates to real cost savings for the company.
Yeah. So it's not just about feeling good. It's about boosting the bottom line, too.
Exactly. It's a win-win. When employees feel valued and supported, they're more likely to be engaged, productive, and they're going to stick around longer.
That's great. Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about a topic that's becoming increasingly important in our digital world, data protection.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one.
It seems like they're really taking a deep dive into their current privacy practices to make sure they're handling all that sensitive customer data responsibly.
Well, they have to.
Right.
Especially with all those regulations like GDPR and CCPA, Those are the ones that have real teeth.
Yeah, those are the ones you don't want to mess with.
Exactly. And so this company, they've done an audit of their current practices, and they've realized that they need to up their game a little bit.
Makes sense. So what are they doing?
Well, they're talking about implementing some pretty serious security measures.
Okay, like what?
Like end-to-end encryption to protect the data while it's being transmitted, and also when it's just sitting there on their servers.
Okay.
Stricter access controls, so not just anybody can get their hands on the data. And even mandatory privacy awareness training for all employees.
Oh, that's a good idea. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
Exactly. But they're not just, ticking boxes and checking off a list.
Yeah.
They're actually working with their legal team to revise all of their customer-facing documents.
Okay, yeah.
To make sure that they're being totally transparent about how that data is collected, used, and protected.
So it's like they're building a fortress around their data, but it's a fortress with like clear signage so that customers know exactly what's going on.
Exactly. In today's data-driven world, trust is paramount.
Absolutely.
Customers are much more likely to do business with companies that they believe are going to handle their data responsibly.
That makes sense. Okay, so speaking of cutting-edge technology, let's step into the world of blockchain. This conversation, it seems like they're really seriously considering integrating blockchain technology into their supply chain. And for anyone who might not be super familiar with blockchain, think of it as like a digital ledger that's basically tamper-proof.
Right. It's like an unhackable record-keeping system.
Which makes it perfect for tracking things securely.
Absolutely. And what I find really interesting is how they're focusing on the very practical benefits of using blockchain.
Like what?
So, for example, enhanced traceability. They're going to be able to track their products all the way from their origin, where they were manufactured, all the way through the supply chain to the final delivery.
Right.
And that helps them identify potential issues like counterfeiting or contamination much faster than they could before.
That's a huge advantage.
It is. And then also, reduce verification times.
Okay.
which of course helps to streamline their processes and can potentially save them money.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing. But they're also being realistic about the complexities of implementing this kind of technology, right?
Oh, yeah. It's not easy.
It's not just flipping a switch.
Right.
They're going to need significant infrastructure upgrades. They're going to have to train their staff, and they'll need to collaborate really closely with all their partners. It's a big undertaking.
It is. But they've done their homework, and they're projecting a 30% cost savings in their verification processes
Wow.
by year 2.
That's a pretty compelling return on investment.
It is. It really shows how these emerging technologies can be used to create a real competitive advantage for businesses that are willing to kind of, embrace them and invest in them.
And who are willing to take some calculated risks.
Okay, so let's move on to a topic that I think might make some people groan a little bit. Employee training.
Oh, yeah. Not always the most exciting topic.
Well, wait, this isn't your typical boring lecture and, death by PowerPoint kind of training. They're talking about using VR for training.
Oh, now that sounds a lot more interesting.
Right.
Like gamifying the whole learning process.
Exactly. So instead of, passively watching a PowerPoint presentation, employees can actually participate in these immersive simulations.
I can see how that would be much more engaging.
And they're talking about using VR to train employees on all kinds of things, from technical maintenance, safety procedures, to, customer service scenarios.
Wow.
Imagine learning how to fix a complex piece of machinery, but you don't have to worry about actually breaking anything while you're learning.
Right. Much lower stakes.
Exactly. And the best part, studies have actually shown that using VR for training leads to 75% better retention
Wow.
compared to those traditional methods.
So people actually remember what they've learned.
They do, which means that they're much more likely to be able to apply it on the job.
That's a game changer for training.
So it's not just about making training more fun, it's about making it more effective.
Exactly. And that ultimately translates to a more skilled and knowledgeable workforce.
Okay, so now let's talk about a topic that's on everyone's mind these days. Sustainability.
Always a hot topic.
It seems like they're setting a pretty ambitious goal for themselves, carbon neutrality by 2025.
That's a bold goal, but it's awesome that they're aiming high. And it really reflects the growing pressure on businesses to do their part to reduce their environmental impact.
Absolutely. And they're not just making some vague promises either.
No.
They've actually gone through and mapped out their current carbon footprint
Okay.
and identified where most of their emissions are coming from.
And where are the biggest culprits?
Unsurprisingly, it's their manufacturing facilities and their transportation operations.
Makes sense.
So they're thinking about a multifaceted approach to tackling this challenge.
Okay.
Things like adopting renewable energy sources like solar and wind power are definitely on the table.
Gotta love renewable energy.
But they're also looking at ways to optimize their current processes to minimize their energy consumption and reduce waste. It's about finding those little efficiencies in every nook and cranny.
Every little bit helps.
It does, it does. And they're not ruling out the possibility of using carbon offsets either to kind of compensate for those emissions that are really tough to eliminate completely.
Right, it's all about finding the right balance.
Exactly. This conversation really shows a real commitment to environmental sustainability. They're willing to put their money where their mouth is and invest in the future of our planet.
It's inspiring to see companies taking this kind of leadership role.
Okay, so hold on tight because we're about to blast off into the metaverse. This conversation, it explores the possibilities of, establishing a presence in this crazy, rapidly evolving virtual world. It's like stepping into a science fiction novel, but it's happening right now.
The metaverse is still kind of a Wild West, but there's so much potential there.
Oh, there is. And they're really interested in targeting younger demographics.
Makes sense. Those are the ones who are already spending a lot of time in virtual worlds.
Gen Z, young millennials. It's like they want to set up shop in the digital playground where all the cool kids are hanging out.
It's a smart strategy.
And they're not just thinking about creating these static virtual spaces either.
Yeah.
You're talking about interactive experiences, virtual product demonstrations, even virtual storefronts where, you can browse and buy stuff without ever leaving your virtual couch.
That's pretty cool. I can see the appeal of that.
And they're thinking strategically about how to measure success in this new environment as well. So, focusing on metrics like virtual foot traffic, how much time people are spending in their virtual space, and of course, conversions.
The bottom line always matters.
This conversation really highlights the need for businesses to be adaptable, innovative, willing to experiment with these new technologies and platforms, and most importantly, meet their customers where they are.
Even if it's in a virtual world.
Even if it's in a virtual world.
That's the future of business.
All right, buckle up, because we are about to enter the mind-boggling world of quantum computing.
Ooh, this is getting deep.
It sounds super complex, but it seems like this company is really exploring how to use this game-changing technology in their R&D pipeline.
Quantum computing is still in its early stages, but it has the potential to revolutionize just about every industry.
It does. It does. And what I find fascinating is how they're already thinking about the very practical applications of it.
Okay, like what?
So they've identified drug discovery and complex financial modeling as two areas where quantum computing could give them a massive edge over their competitors.
I could see how that would be a game changer.
Imagine being able to develop new drugs or make much more accurate financial predictions at a speed that's just impossible with today's technology. It's like having a superpowered brain that can solve problems in the blink of an eye.
That's a powerful image.
But, they're not just focused on the potential benefits, they're also aware of the challenges.
Right. And what are some of the challenges they're anticipating?
Well, one of the big ones is security. Quantum computers are so powerful that they'll actually be able to break many of the encryption algorithms that we rely on today to keep our data safe.
Oh, wow. So it's a double-edged sword.
It is. It is. And that's why they're talking about implementing what they call quantum-safe security protocols, basically future-proofing their systems against this emerging threat. They're not just thinking about today's problems, they're anticipating tomorrow's challenges as well.
That's smart.
And this conversation highlights the importance of, having foresight and planning strategically, especially in the face of all these disruptive technologies that are coming down the pike. It's not enough to just react to change. You have to anticipate it and be prepared to adapt.
Absolutely. Companies that can do that are the ones that are going to thrive in the long run.
Okay, so last but not least, let's dive into a conversation about automation. It's a topic that I think often causes a lot of mixed feelings, both excitement and a bit of anxiety,
Yeah, I can understand that. It's a topic that has a lot of implications for the future of work.
It does. And it seems like this company is approaching automation with, a good balance of both.
So they're not just jumping in head first.
No, they're being strategic about it.
Okay, good.
What's really striking is how they're analyzing their operations, identifying those areas where automation can actually make the biggest impact.
That makes sense. You don't want to just automate for the sake of automating.
Exactly. They're already using automation in some of their operations, like manufacturing and logistics.
Mm-hmm.
But they see the potential to take it even further, specifically in their warehouse operations, where they're actually aiming for an 80% automation rate.
Wow. So basically a warehouse where robots are doing most of the heavy lifting.
Exactly. But, they're not being naive about the potential downsides either.
Okay, like what?
So they're addressing those safety concerns head on. They're implementing all these advanced AI safety systems and redundancies,
To make sure that everything runs smoothly.
to make sure that those autonomous systems are operating safely and reliably.
Good.
And they're also acknowledging that this is going to have an impact on their workforce. They're planning to retrain their employees for more supervisory roles and provide support during that transition.
It's about working with the workforce, not against it.
Exactly. And what's really exciting is their projected productivity gain, a 200% increase in output within 18 months.
Wow, that's huge.
That's really a testament to the power of automation when it's done strategically and thoughtfully.
Absolutely. This conversation is a great example of how businesses can embrace automation to enhance their operations, improve efficiency, and create new opportunities for growth, while also addressing the ethical and societal implications of this technological shift.
It's a really delicate balance.
It is.
Okay, so get ready for a glimpse into the future of security. Biometric access control.
Ooh, sounds futuristic.
It seems like they're looking to implement this technology company-wide to really ramp up their security and streamline how people access their facilities.
So instead of using traditional methods like key cards or passwords, they're going to use things like fingerprints or facial recognition
Exactly.
to verify people's identities.
And it's actually a lot more secure than those traditional methods because, it relies on unique biological characteristics.
Right. You can't just lose your fingerprint or forget your face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're considering using a multi-factor authentication system. So, combining something like facial recognition with a fingerprint scan, which adds an extra layer of security. It's like something out of a spy movie, but it's becoming increasingly common in the real world.
I've seen it at airports and stuff.
Right. But they're also addressing those privacy concerns head on,
Yeah.
They're being very careful about developing really strict data handling and consent procedures to make sure that that biometric data is collected, stored, and used responsibly.
Transparency is key, especially when it comes to sensitive data like that.
Absolutely. And they've chosen a system that has a really high accuracy rate and includes anti-spoofing measures to minimize the risk of false positives or unauthorized access.
So they've done their research.
They have. And they're also being smart about the rollout. They're starting with their high security areas first, just to test the system and make sure everything's running smoothly before they expand it company-wide.
A phased rollout is always a good approach.
It is. It is. It minimizes disruption and allows you to, kind of iron out any kinks along the way. Okay, let's talk about renewable energy.
One of my favorite topics.
It seems like they're looking to really speed up their adoption of clean energy sources, reduce their environmental impact, and contribute to a more sustainable future.
Awesome. And this conversation really highlights the growing importance of renewable energy as businesses are facing more and more pressure to reduce their carbon footprint.
Absolutely. And they've actually already done an energy audit
Okay.
and have a transition plan in place.
That's great. It shows that they're being proactive about this.
They are. It's like they're trading in their gas-guzzling car for a sleek electric vehicle, right?
Love that analogy.
So they've analyzed their energy use, and they've identified solar and wind power as the most viable options for their locations.
Okay.
Based on, factors like cost, availability, and those kinds of things.
Right.
And they're even considering energy storage solutions as well, like, advanced battery systems to make sure that they have a reliable power supply even when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. It's like having a backup generator for those cloudy or windless days.
That's a good way to think about it.
And they're not just focused on the, obvious environmental benefits.
Right.
They're also looking at the financial side of things. They're actually projecting a 5-year payback period on their initial investment in all that renewable energy infrastructure.
So it makes financial sense too.
It does. This conversation really demonstrates that businesses can make a huge difference in reducing their environmental impact while also achieving some really great financial benefits through renewable energy. It's a win-win for the planet and for their bottom line.
I love those win-win situations.
Me too. All right, hold on to your hats because we are about to venture into the final frontier, commercial space.
Wow, this is getting really exciting.
This conversation explores the potential opportunities for their technology in the rapidly growing world of space exploration and development.
So we're not just talking about satellites anymore.
No, we're talking about everything from, satellite communications and space manufacturing to even space tourism.
That's amazing. The commercial space industry is really taking off.
It is, and they've identified a couple of promising markets where they think their technology could really have a competitive advantage, especially in satellite communications and space manufacturing. It's like they want to be the go-to tech provider for the next generation of space pioneers.
That's a bold vision.
It is, but they're also not shying away from the risks involved in these kinds of ventures.
Right, because there are definitely risks.
Things like, launch failures, equipment malfunctions, the harsh environment of space. It's not exactly a walk in the park out there.
No, it's not.
But they've done a comprehensive risk analysis.
Okay, good.
And they've developed some mitigation plans to try to address those challenges as best they can. It's a calculated risk, but one that could potentially have, astronomical rewards.
I like how you did that. Astronomical rewards.
I couldn't resist. They're also exploring potential partnerships with space agencies and other companies that are already operating in the space industry.
Makes sense. Collaborate and learn from the best.
Right. This conversation really highlights the need for businesses to think outside the box and explore new frontiers, like commercial space, which offers, really significant growth potential and also the chance to contribute to those groundbreaking advancements in technology and exploration.
It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, so let's bring things back down to earth for a minute and talk about a challenge that a lot of businesses are facing, especially with the rise of remote work. employee engagement. It seems like they're struggling a little bit to keep their remote teams feeling, motivated and connected to the company.
Yeah, that's a common problem. It
Yeah.
can be tough to maintain that sense of community when everyone's scattered all over the place.
It is. And this conversation really emphasizes how important it is to be really intentional about addressing employee engagement, especially in a remote work environment.
It doesn't just happen on its own. You have to put in the effort.
Right. And it seems like one of their primary concerns is communication breakdowns between different teams. When you're not physically in the same space, it's really easy for information to get lost in translation, which leads to delays, frustration, all that fun stuff.
It's like playing a game of telephone, but with emails and project deadlines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're talking about implementing daily virtual stand-up meetings
Oh.
just to kind of keep everybody in the loop. It's like a virtual huddle to make sure everyone's on the same page.
I like that.
And they're also thinking about ways to, boost morale and foster that sense of community even when people are working remotely. So they're looking at virtual team building activities,
Fun.
recognition programs.
Always good to recognize people's contributions.
And then, of course, work-life balance is a huge consideration. When your office is in your home, it can be really tough to switch off and set those boundaries, which can lead to burnout. It's like trying to escape the gravitational pull of your laptop.
It really is. You have to be disciplined about setting those boundaries.
And they've even developed specific KPIs to track their progress in improving employee engagement, productivity, and satisfaction.
Okay, so they're taking a data-driven approach to this.
They are. This conversation really shows that businesses need to be proactive and intentional about fostering employee engagement, especially in a world where remote work is becoming more and more common.
Absolutely. You can't just assume that people are going to be engaged and motivated on their own. You have to create the right environment and provide the right support.
All right, so we're talking about AI again.
Back to the robots.
This time, they're discussing how to, really accelerate their adoption of AI and implement it across their various processes.
AI is no longer just a buzzword. It's becoming an essential tool for businesses that want to stay competitive.
It is. And they've identified a couple of key areas where they think AI can make a real difference right away: customer service automation and predictive maintenance.
Those are great use cases for AI.
They are. And they're being smart about it.
Okay.
They're acknowledging that, implementing AI requires a significant investment. You've got to train your staff. You've got to make sure that you're handling data privacy concerns. It's not just about plugging in a robot and hoping for the best.
Right. It's about integrating AI thoughtfully into your existing workflows.
Exactly. And they've actually gone through and evaluated different AI vendors based on their specific needs and requirements, which is a smart move. They're also considering starting with a pilot program in their customer support department just to test the waters before they roll it out more broadly.
A pilot program is a great way to get started with AI. You can test things out on a smaller scale, see what works, what doesn't work, and then make adjustments before you go all in.
Exactly. This conversation really highlights how to approach AI adoption strategically and thoughtfully.
It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how you implement it.
Okay, so now let's talk about shareholder activism and how it's really pushing a lot of companies to take action on those, ESG issues, the environmental, social, and governance factors.
Yeah, ESG is a big deal these days.
It seems like the shareholders are demanding stronger initiatives in these areas, and this company is taking notice.
Well, they have to. Investors are increasingly looking at ESG factors when making investment decisions.
Absolutely. And this conversation really underscores the growing importance of these ESG considerations for any business, really.
Right. It's not just about making money anymore. It's about making a positive impact on the world.
And they're not just paying lip service to ESG either. They've actually benchmarked their current practices against, what the industry leaders are doing, and they've identified some areas where they need to improve, particularly in their environmental impact reporting and their diversity metrics.
Okay, so they're being honest about where they stand.
They are, and they're actually proposing some concrete actions, like setting up a dedicated sustainability committee
Good idea.
and a diversity task force to really drive progress in these areas.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is.
They are, and they've even developed what's called a balanced scorecard with specific, measurable quarterly targets to track their progress towards their ESG goals.
That's great. Accountability is key.
It is. And they're also thinking about how to be more transparent with their stakeholders,
Right.
recognizing that it's not enough to just do good things. You have to communicate your efforts to build trust and credibility.
Absolutely. You have to show people what you're doing.
And they're even considering going for that B Corp certification.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
It is. It's like that gold star for corporate citizenship.
It's a rigorous third-party certification that really demonstrates a commitment to social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency.
It's a high bar to clear. And this conversation really highlights that ESG is no longer just this, nice to have for businesses. It's becoming a core part of how they operate and a key driver of long-term value creation.
It's about doing good and doing well at the same time.
Exactly. And, investors, customers, employees, everybody's demanding that companies operate in a more sustainable and responsible way.
So it's not just the right thing to do, it's also good for business.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about everything from, those classic project management headaches to navigating the metaverse. It's been a whirlwind tour of the world of business. But before we wrap up, there's one last conversation I want to highlight. It's about a company that's setting an ambitious goal for themselves, carbon neutrality by 2025. And it seems like they're really serious about making it happen.
That's great to hear. It's inspiring to see companies taking this kind of leadership role.
They've actually already started taking concrete steps. They've mapped out their carbon footprint across all of their operations, and they've identified the biggest culprits, which, not surprisingly, are their manufacturing facilities and their transportation operations.
Makes sense. Those are often the biggest sources of emissions for companies.
And their solution isn't just some single magic bullet. It's really a multi-pronged approach. They're talking about adopting renewable energy, of course.
Got to have the solar panels and wind turbines.
Exactly. But they're also looking at how they can optimize their processes. Squeezing more efficiency out of every step, it can have a surprisingly big impact on emissions.
Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. And they're not ruling out carbon offsets either. It's a way to balance out those emissions that are really tough to eliminate completely by investing in projects that reduce emissions somewhere else.
It's like planting a tree for every mile you drive.
Exactly. And what I find really impressive is that they've actually put numbers to all
of this.
Yeah.
They're talking about a $5 million investment over 3 years.
Wow.
They're projecting maybe like a 5% increase in their operating costs initially,
Okay.
but they're expecting long-term savings through all those efficiency gains.
That makes sense.
And they're even thinking ahead to the reporting requirements. They're planning for quarterly carbon accounting and verification. This is not just greenwashing. This is a company that is taking carbon neutrality seriously.
It's not just a PR move, it's a core business strategy.
Exactly. It shows that sustainability isn't just about, doing the right thing for the planet. It's about being a forward-thinking, responsible business that's prepared for the future.
Okay, so next up, we're diving into a conversation that feels like it's straight out of science fiction. The metaverse.
Okay.
But this is not some far-off concept anymore. This is something that companies are actively exploring right now. And what I find really intriguing here is how they're approaching the metaverse strategically.
Right.
They're not just jumping in because it's trendy.
Right.
They're thinking about, who they can reach, what type of content is going to resonate in this virtual world.
Yeah, it's a whole new landscape.
It is. It is. And they've got their target audience pretty clearly defined. Gen Z, those young millennials, the digital natives who are already comfortable spending a lot of time in virtual spaces. It's like they're setting up shop in a digital playground where all the cool kids are hanging out.
Smart move.
And they're not limiting themselves to just, creating those passive experiences either.
Yeah.
They're talking about interactive content, virtual product demonstrations, even virtual events and storefronts.
Wow.
Imagine being able to try on clothes or test drive a car, all from the comfort of your own home.
That's the future of shopping.
It is. It is. And they're also not forgetting about the business side of things.
Right.
They're thinking about how do we measure success in the metaverse? Looking at things like virtual foot traffic, how much time people are spending engaging with their content, and of course, conversions. Are people actually buying stuff?
The bottom line always matters.
It does. It does. This conversation really highlights the need for businesses to be adaptable and innovative. Experiment with new technologies, new platforms, and meet their customers where they are, even if it's in a virtual world.
That's the key. Adapt or die.
All right, so buckle up, because we are about to enter the mind-boggling world of quantum computing.
Okay, I'm ready.
It sounds incredibly complex, but this company is actually exploring how to use this, game-changing technology in their R&D pipeline.
It's still early days for quantum computing, but the potential is huge.
Oh, it is. It is. And they've identified a couple of areas where they think quantum computing could give them a real edge: drug discovery and those really complex financial models.
Right. Those are areas where traditional computers just can't keep up.
Exactly. Imagine being able to develop new drugs or make those super accurate financial predictions at a speed that's just impossible right now.
It revolutionized those industries.
But they're not just focusing on those potential benefits.
Right.
They're also aware of the challenges that come with quantum computing. One of the big ones is security.
Okay, yeah. I've heard about that.
Quantum computers are so powerful that they could actually break many of the encryption algorithms that we rely on today. So, that's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Definitely a security risk to consider.
That's why they're talking about implementing what they call quantum-safe security protocols. It's basically future-proofing their systems against that emerging threat. They're not just thinking about today's problems, they're thinking about what might come up tomorrow.
That's smart. All about being proactive.
And this conversation really highlights the importance of foresight and planning strategically, especially when it comes to these disruptive technologies.
Absolutely. You can't just wait and see what happens. You have to anticipate the changes and be ready to adapt.
Okay, so last but not least, we're going to dive into a conversation about automation. It's a topic that often sparks, some mixed feelings: excitement, anxiety.
Right. It's a topic that has a lot of implications for the future of work.
It does, it does. And what's really striking here is how this company is approaching automation strategically.
Okay, good.
They're not just automating for the sake of automating.
Right.
They're analyzing their operations to figure out where automation can really make the biggest impact. And they're already using automation in a lot of their operations, manufacturing, logistics, those kinds of things. But they see the potential to take it even further, specifically in their warehouse operations. They're actually aiming for an 80% automation rate.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Imagine a warehouse where most of the heavy lifting is being done by robots.
That's the future.
But they're not naive about the potential downsides either.
Yeah.
They're addressing those safety concerns head on. They're implementing all these advanced AI safety systems and redundancies to make sure that those autonomous systems are operating safely and reliably.
Good. Safety first.
And they're also acknowledging that this is going to have an impact on their workforce. So they're planning to retrain employees for more supervisory roles, and they're going to provide support during that transition.
That's the right approach. You have to bring your employees along with you.
And what's really exciting is that they're projecting a 200% increase in output within 18 months.
Wow, that's a huge productivity gain.
It really is, and it shows the power of automation when it's done right.
Absolutely, when it's done strategically and thoughtfully.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from project woes to metaverse strategies, quantum computing, even the future of work. It's been quite a journey.
It has. It's amazing to see how businesses are tackling all these challenges and opportunities.
So there you have it, your crash course in the language of modern business. Expert speaker before we let our listener go and tackle their next big challenge. Any final insights to leave them with?
What really struck me throughout all these conversations is that business at its core is really about people.
Yeah, I love that.
Whether you're negotiating a contract, leading a team through a crisis, or even just trying to get a project back on track, clear communication, empathy, these are the things that really matter.
It's a good reminder that even in a world that's increasingly dominated by technology and data, it's those human skills that really make a difference.
Absolutely. And never underestimate the power of asking good questions.
Yeah.
Asking insightful questions. It can unlock new perspectives, spark innovation, maybe even open doors to opportunities that you never even imagined.
So for our listeners out there, as you navigate the complex and ever-changing world of business, remember to stay curious, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask those tough questions. You never know what you might discover.